never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Hi. Excuse me. Hi, beautiful people. Okay, we're live. If you're watching me on the replay, thank you for watching me. I appreciate you. What I do on Wednesdays is I get to talk to amazing people that are doing things to empower. I just lied. That's what I used to do, actually. What I do on this podcast. So I used to talk to people who are empowering other people, and then I decided I was going to open up a wellness center, and I don't have the capacity to do that anymore. So now I come on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live, and I record a topic. And a lot of the topics that I talk about are things that people go through. And, I've been in the mental health field for over 20 years. And so I just kind of break down the topic and help people understand how they can deal with it. One of the things about life is that it doesn't come with a manual. There's a ton of self-help books. And I think a lot of people have knowledge, but how to apply it and how to deal with the ways that it can feel hard to do, something that can feel like a pond or something easy to walk over, like logically. It seems like, okay, I just got to do this. But when you actually put it into practice, it's actually pretty challenging to do. And so I think that one of the things that I've learned with working with people over the years is that when you let them know that, okay, this is what's going to happen, it's going to feel this way, they will keep going. They won't feel like giving up. But if you get the tools and you say, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z, but then a feeling starts coming and it feels hard, it's easy to just go back to what you know. Even if what you knew was hard, it's what you know. And, I guess to put that into comparison, I use this example a lot when people like have a heart, lung transplant, whatever, because their heart or lung is bad. And they decide that, a transplant comes in, a new heart comes in. So the heart that may have been operating at like 10% and they get a new heart that's operating at 100%, the body can reject the 100% heart. And the reason why that happens is because it's introducing a foreign concept to your body, even if it's a good foreign concept, foreign object. And so the doctors give people medicine, they tell them what to do, what not to do in order to help their system get acclimated to the new heart, right? And so when it comes to health and wellness and kind of being able to live the optimal care and wellness for yourself, it requires the same thing. It's kind of like, yeah, I know I need to go for this walk. I know I need to change my diet. I know I need to get rid of these people that are in my life. But it's going to require you understanding that the beginning stages are going to feel hard. And so I think that's what I do when I come on. So last week we discussed decluttering the mind, something that's so important and so powerful. I think we allow so many things to impact our mind. And today we're talking about not allowing people to dim your light. So if you follow me on Instagram, on my Instagram stories, I typically put up topics and let people vote on what we're going to talk about this week. And so this one was at the top where people wanted to talk about the subject. And so as we begin to talk about this subject, I always like to talk about or start with why mental health is important. The fact that there's so much stigma around it, it really doesn't make sense because it affects so much of our lives. But as you can see here, mental health is a fundamental aspect of our overall health and quality. It's an importance at every stage from childhood to adulthood. And, even in the womb, when we're in our parents' stomach, that's where it begins, believe it or not. In some countries, maternal health care looks different, where you're forced not to work, you're forced not to do certain things because they recognize that this is where it starts. So if you're If your parent was an anxious parent and you were in the womb, all of that stuff is getting passed on to you. So from childhood to adulthood, and helps people cope with stress, build relationships, and make healthy choices. And a lot of the choices that we make in life, even like as an adult, a lot of times it's not healthy because our mental health is like out of whack. We're just like really trying to mitigate pain. A lot of the addictions and struggles that people have, a lot of times it's happening because they're just trying to mitigate pain, and they don't realize that's what's happening. And so my goal is to help you learn how to deal with the pain, because there's some things about life that happens, and like if we're talking about grief or different things that happen that are beyond your control, like there's no way to erase or eradicate it. Like sometimes it's just going to be a part of your life. But how do I accept that and keep moving on? I think this is a message that people need to hear. So let's recognize, what are some signs of someone dimming your light? And so when I think about people's light being dimmed, right, I think we're all uniquely made and we all have different gifts. But a lot of times people don't realize that they have like kind of dumbed themselves down or stayed into a little box. A lot of times it's because of the fact that you've given somebody else the switch to your light, and not realizing, like, it's not an actual like tangible switch. Like we're not like handing it over. And anything that I'm talking about around mental health, or like a lot of it, we can't see it. That's why we find ourselves in these cycles, right? And so I'm here to help you identify these cycles and identify these things and kind of make it tangible. Um, can a baby be born with a mental illness, or is it developed? Great question. Um, when you say born with the mental health, we're all susceptible to something happening or mental health. There are people that are more prone to it depending on their family history and their DNA, right? Um, like some major ones, schizophrenia, bipolar, where people, like if you have a parent, like the likelihood of you developing it is higher than some. And there's so many different factors that play a role in the development of that kind of diagnoses. But a big part of it is like trauma and stress that can play a role in the development of it, right? So when you say born with it, it's not like when somebody comes out the womb, the doctor's diagnosing them with a mental health issue. So there's no way to like quantify that like in a study where it's like they were born this way. Um, Family history and DNA. Yeah. So yeah, the family history and DNA is what is huge factors. But again, like when people have parents that may struggle with mental health and these kind of things, and obviously there's concern because it's kind of like um I don't want that to happen to me, but I don't want people to think that like you're automatically doomed because of it, right? But be mindful of like being very intentional about your care. I think we all should be very intentional about our care, but I always, if there's this history that's happening, really being mindful of that. So a lot of times people don't realize that they've given people the switch to their mind, their life. And I want to help you make sure that you get that switch back. Because I always tell people you have more power than you realize. You just have to have faith to believe in yourself. And when you have faith and you start believing in yourself, like no one can take that away from you. So here's some signs of people that may be dimming your light, right? So some passive aggressive behavior is a common tactic. Jealousy and competition, when others feel threatened by your success. Um, and this is a big one, and I'll talk about that in a second. Undermining your achievements in the subtle ways of others suppress your accomplishment, like, oh, you got your little book or your little podcast. Really minimizing the things that you're talking about. People don't realize how some of the comments that they're hearing, especially from people that are in their life, how it affects them. And so gaslighting and manipulation, tactics used to make you doubt yourself, criticizing your ideas, and trying to undermine your confidence. And I'll say this, I definitely see this a lot in relationships. I would say heterosexual relationships, where I notice women a lot of times find themselves kind of minimizing their accomplishments and things like that. If they're in a relationship where their partner isn't secure, like they'll pick up on that quickly. This can happen with friendships and family, where you are finding yourself minimizing the things that you're doing because you're recognizing that the person in your life is insecure, or other reasons why. And I'll share why you may be doing that, because it's not just people dimming your light. You also may find yourself dimming your own light and not realizing it. I know, even when I started my business back in 2015, I didn't even want to put my stuff on like my website or share what I was doing. And in my mind, I was like, I don't want people to think I'm better than them. I never felt that way. Nobody said that. But I think, especially in the Black community, we grow up, if you go back to slavery time, a lot of our parents and parents' would minimize the accomplishments of their kids out of survival, because if they knew how amazing this kid was, they may be taken away from us. So I'm going to like dumb them down and keep them low. And then also the humbleness, right? If you were a slave and you knew how to read or knew how to do these amazing things, um, you were used more, right? So things were kept in secret. And I feel that because of that, these things, the traditions and the way that we do things just kept getting passed on and passed on. And so a lot of times, especially like I know in a lot of Caribbean households, um, that people, your parent will minimize your accomplishment, right? Or, I try to get people to celebrate the moments, and people struggle with celebrating the moments if they don't have the degree, or if they're not a doctor or a lawyer, if they didn't get a house. It's kind of like, what am I celebrating? I haven't gotten that degree yet, but you passed the class, you passed the test. So a lot of the ways that you may find yourself dimming your light could stem from just the way you were brought up. And when I bring into parents and history, it's not to blame anyone or blame a parent. It's really to help you understand how it started. So you're not internalizing it. And as children, we're very narcissists. We think everything's about us, right? Until you tell us not, we think it's about us. And that's why, like, if I'm overwhelmed, I'll let my kids know, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Give me a second. Like, I'm very communicative with them, because I understand my bandwidth and know it. And I also understand that my demeanor could be taken in the wrong way, because we internalize a lot of things. And so as I talk about like history and how things may have been passed on from generation to generation, is so that you can be aware and work on kind of shifting and changing that mindset. Um, I've Ursula says, I've experienced jealousy, competition from a parent and as a child, and I unknowingly learned to dim my light for their approval. Yes. And I noticed this happens a lot. I watched this really good podcast, and where it talked about like, why does my mother hate me? Is a Black lady talking about her relationship with her mother. And it's a podcast called Girls Stop. And I will put the link in the show notes when I do this episode. But she talked about, she has a platform called Mother Wound, I believe it's called. And she talked about, it was really good. And I read the comments and I wanted to cry. Like, so many Black women go through this, where the person talking about her experience, she's seen a show and she realized, like, oh my God, I'm not being treated right. And then her brother was born and she realized she felt her brother was treated better. And the mom had her at a young age, didn't really get to experience life. And I saw that podcast. Yes, Jennifer Anise, thank you, was the guest. Thank you. It was eye-opening. And the mom was jealous of her daughter because her daughter was a free spirit and was probably doing the things that she wanted to do. And I think about that, right? When people have children, I don't think they say like, "Oh, I'm gonna treat them a certain way. Or I'm gonna be jealous of them." Like I don't think that that's part of their psyche. And that's why it's important to work on your stuff and your mental health, because you don't recognize what you're passing on to your children or to the next generation or to the people that you love. And it was a really hard journey for her. The person, the caregiver, the person that's supposed to love you and take care of you, and to have that much jealousy and competition, and this happens a lot. It's unfortunate, but I do think that it's important to understand what's happening, because, especially in the Black community, we tend to stick with family even if they're not treating us well. And that's just never okay. And I think that maybe during the slavery time, it was important because we was all we had. So we had to stick together and deal with the BS. But we're in 2024, and a lot of your ways of thinking about, like, well, it's family, is what's hindering you a lot of times. Especially the mother wound, right? And it's kind of like you want to be able to take care of her, you want to be able to be there, but you also recognize like you're getting cussed out or you're being diminished in many ways. So being so mindful of that. Hey Rich, had to cut my own mama off. Yeah, so I mean sometimes you do. And it's not like it's not the go-to thing. It's not like, you're going to grieve it. I'm not saying, oh, just cut people off, but I'm saying be mindful of your mental health and how you're being affected by people in your life, regardless of if it's family. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ursula. It's important. Just pray for her. Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you're a spiritual person, you can let go. And I'm not saying that journey is easy, but I'm saying sometimes it's necessary. It's necessary to do. Um, I'm recently estranged from my dad, and grief processing is no joke. Yes. And, and as I share, like sometimes you got to let people go. I do want to, because grieving is something that can happen even when somebody's still on earth. There are people, family members that I have let go because of the fact that like it wasn't good for my mental health. And so, doing that, you kind of look like the oddball when, and I'll say this, and maybe I'll make this a topic, but um you seem like the oddball. And when you think about it, like if your family system is very dysfunctional and that's where you grew up, and you say like, I want to go to therapy, I want to work on myself, you start working on yourself, right? So now you've been in a very dysfunctional system and you pull yourself out of it. Now you're trying to be functional. Understand that, yeah, you do seem like the dysfunctional person when you're doing something different than everyone else, right? My like the healthy lifestyle that I start living, even people in my life, family, friends, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that stuff? Talking about mental health. I've been talking about mental health online publicly since probably like 2010. When I was dealing with infertility, I created a whole series on it. I've always been a very transparent person who really enjoys sharing. Like I love sharing. And since 2010, yeah, 2010, I've talked about things and people thought something like, why would you do something like that? Because that's not what they would do, right? And this actually ties into like your light being dimmed. This isn't what they would do, and so they will look at you like you're the oddball. Um, um, okay, I'm going to finish this broadcast. All right, so we talked about the signs. Now, I'm going to play this video from Dr. Dare. It's a 3-minute video where he talks about the 5 reasons why people condemn your light when you're giving them control of your light switch, right? I always like to, even when I'm working with people and something's happened, I'm really big on helping people look at their role in the situation. A lot of times as adults, you can feel powerless, but when you break it down, you're really not powerless, but you feel powerless. And that feeling can feel so hard and it could feel so accurate and real. So feeling powerless and being powerless is two different things. So that's something that's important to understand. So let's just watch this video by Dr. Dare where he talks about this.
Hey, it's Dr. Deal with 5 reasons why people condemn your light, because you've given them control of your light switch. And that leads me to number 1 is that you care about people's opinions too much. And that leads me to number 2 is that you allow a few negative comments to stop you in your track of what you're doing. And that leads me to number 3 is that you allow people's negative comments to question your own self-worth. And that leads me to number 4, you're constantly asking people for their opinion when they don't even have any experience in the thing that you're asking them about. And that leads me to number 5, this is a big one. You let the lack of support stop you from doing what you wanted to do. If this is you, I say keep going. Don't listen to people. Don't worry about the support. Don't worry about even your negative self-talk about yourself or the things you're doing. Keep pushing forward. There is a bright light at the end of the tunnel, but if you don't have any work to show for it, then nothing's going to happen. And you don't have any work to show for it is because you let people, take control of that switch and just dim your light, and then you go sit down and be quiet, and then 5 years later you're regretting that you didn't move forward. So if this is you,
the part about 5 years later, you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out why you didn't move forward. And I'm sure some people that are listening to this now can even think about how they have been sitting here thinking about why I didn't move forward. Living with regret is like the worst thing you can do. And I know the fear of stepping out of your comfort zone feels like really hard and challenging, but I promise you the fear of the living with the regret of not doing it feels worse because it's a lifetime thing. It's not like a quick transition of like, okay, I feel fear of doing this and it feels uncomfortable. I'm going to do it anyway. Right. So a quick recap of what he said for people that are listening. So 5 reasons why people condemn your light. 1, you care about people's opinions, right? Opinions, we all have them. So be mindful of that as you're allowing them to have so much stake in your life. You allow negative comments to stop you in your track. And this is obviously hard. If you're wondering, like, why do I allow negative comments to stop me in my track? Because that negative comment is attaching to some stuff in the past. The mind is such a powerful place. And that's why, like, my wellness center is called Shifting the Way You Think. It's something I say all the time. That I've coined and branded, because I believe that if we can work on shifting our thought process, we can change the trajectory of our life. Hitting the lottery is nice. Winning a house or a car is nice. But what is that going to do for me if my thought process is still jacked up and I'm allowing people's negative comments to attach to the old stuff, right? I got to shift my thought process around that. You allow people's comments to have you questioning your own self-worth. It's the audacity for me, right? Like, those are things you got to say to yourself if somebody makes a statement, and you have to like really sit. And that's why sitting and processing and being still is powerful. Renewing your mind is powerful, because if you're just like going day by day, you're scrolling, you're having conversations that aren't fruitful, you don't realize how all that junk, it just sits in your system. But if you're actually making time, let me journal, let me process my day, let me think about what's happened. If you really start to do that work, you're going to be able to get rid of all that junk. Last week, we talked about decluttering your mind, and I played a clip where a guy was talking about, you got to think about all the things you're exposed to, and the fact that you're allowing trash in your system. And imagine in real life, if like you just was cooking and the wrappers and stuff, you never like, let me put this in the trash, let me put this in the sink, like try to organize those thoughts. That's why it's important to really think about organizing your thoughts. And then he says, you're asking the wrong people for their opinion. Sometimes it's not even about them trying to dim your light. It's the fact that they don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. They don't know what it's like to step out their comfort zone. So they're only able to give you the information that they have. If I continue to go to a heart doctor and I'm having feet issues and the doctor wants to keep talking about my heart, I can't get upset because I'm going to somebody that only knows about the heart, not the feet. Right. And so when you're thinking about the people that you may be asking for advice or guidance, understand like their limitation and what they're able to do and not able to do. And then the last thing, you're allowing the lack of support to stop you from doing what you want to do. And I always say, if I waited for people to support my journey, outside of my like husband and a handful of people in my life that has been on this journey with me from the beginning, it wasn't like I didn't have all these people supporting me. And then when the people that were supporting me were people I didn't even know, right? And so if I waited for somebody to say like, "Oh, Celeste, good job," like I never would have kept going. I never would be in the process of doing the things that I'm doing. So if part of your struggle is like, well, my friends or they're not supporting me, you find your tribe, you find the people that will support you, right? That's important. All right, let me read the comments. This is so on point, and I'm working on this. Yes, that's so good. I'm 8 years no contact with a toxic parent. It was the best thing I have done for my mental health. Yes, good. And I'm sure that it wasn't easy to do, right? Like, so even as you're sharing that, like, because people are like, oh, I wish I can do it like she did, but understand like that's a whole process that takes time, but it's definitely like rewarding on the other side. So what happens when you dim your light, right? Because I need you to understand the ramifications if you continue to allow yourself for your light to be dimmed. Dimming your light to make others comfortable hinders your growth. Some of us learn to dim our to protect us from heartache or rejection. However, when you dim your light, you close yourself off from love and acceptance. And that was from a blog post, findinghappily.com. The part about this first part about some of us learn to dim our light to protect us from heartache and rejection. That's real. The things that we experience, remember the mind and the body, it keeps the score. And so the mind actually is doing what it's designed to do. I've had an experience where I was rejected or something happened, and now I'm trying to do something different. Now my mind's going into the archives and it's like, wait, hold on for a second, Celeste, do you really want to do that? Remember what happened last time. I need to answer that thought. I cannot allow that because that was in the past. And I go through this with people. I'm like, yeah, well, back then you didn't have this awareness or X, Y, and Z. I need you to think about the importance of like, yes, recognizing that thought is there, but don't allow it to have so much power in your decision making moving forward. Another struggle that can happen if you allow your light to be dimmed is you missed ideas and opportunities. Have you ever shared a new love interest only to have people reject them? This is more common than you think. The next time you meet someone new, get to know them before revealing them to people you know. That's just one example. An idea you have, a business idea, something that you're about to do, right? Sometimes you have to operate in silence. Sometimes it be your own people. And again, it may not be about them hating or trying to dim your light. It literally could be they don't understand. I did not know one entrepreneur when I started my practice in 2015. And so people were saying like, oh, you think you could do that? Oh, the comments was made. And then, I hear the comments and then I'm not going to lie. I was like, damn, can I do this? Like my stomach would drop. And then what I would do is I would look at, okay, if this doesn't work, I can do this. Like, cause we get stuck in the like, what if this doesn't work? Cause that's real, right? It may not work, but why can't we actually add in the other, what if it does work? Right? Like there's a possibility it may not work, but unfortunately people put a period there. I put a comma and I say, there's a possibility that things could work out. And that's what you have to think about. So as you're developed, let's say you have an idea and you're trying to flesh it out. Sometimes you just can't share it with people. Wait until you are in a space to kind of solidify and know what you're looking for. And if you do want to share it, like thinking about people that are already in that space that you can bounce things off of. Why you may be dimming your light. So if you've been dimming your light and you you don't understand why. These are a couple of things. Being ostracized. Some of us dim our light because we fear being alone. That's real. You know, we believe if we go off with a new love or move away for a new career, we will be ostracized. Sure, we might lose some people, but the ones that love us will respect us. The idea of being alone, when I talk about change and how you're working on yourself and the awareness, and you start to look at some of your relationships with people, not just intimate, I'm just saying in general, where you realize that they're not reciprocal. That's really hard. And sometimes people struggle with their boundaries and doing certain things because they're afraid people might leave. And that is a real thing. People might leave. They may, because you're not benefiting them the way you did before, right? But the reality is, it's like, I rather have quality over quantity. As I got older, the amount of people that I associated with changed drastically, not just as I got older, but as I became more self aware of what I was choosing and how I was being affected. The quantity changed, but the quality is so much stronger. And so really be mindful of that as you are trying to work on not allowing your light to be dimmed. Yes, it is real that people may change up on you, right? If you say, I'm going to do it anyway. And that's literally happened to me. But on the other side of it is that you're living out your goals, you're living out your values, you're living out your dreams. And that is so much better than living with regret. The next thing is why you may be dimming your light is we feel unsafe. Some people feel safer in the shadows than standing in the light. This is because people fear being mocked, judged, and criticized. Instead of fearing these negative behaviors, focus on the love and support you receive from shining your light. Sometimes it's your own tribe that has made you feel unsafe. Sometimes it's the way you grew up, where you were taught um, not to shine your light. Don't tell these people this, right? Like a lot of you got to understand it stems from a survival space that we no longer have to do. And so those are some ways to think about like how you may be dimming your light. I just have two more clips. One, we're going to talk the strategies, and then I want to play a clip from Lisa Nicole. I love everything. When I hear Lisa Nicole talks, it's so dope. So strategies for dealing with people who try to dim your light. One, you got to set boundaries. Boundaries are so important. If you start establishing boundaries, they make a statement about, oh, your little podcast. It's like, no, actually, it's pretty big. Like, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Like, be okay with sharing and talking about your stuff. It took me a while to be comfortable talking about what I was doing, like a while. And I don't think it was about people dimming my light. I think I was the culprit in dimming my own light, right? That's why I'm bringing that into the conversation, just because of like I didn't see people, I didn't have people in my life that was vocal or doing the things that I was doing. So um, I didn't want to be different. I didn't want people to think I was different, you know. I just wanted to feel like I still belonged, but belonging in a space that I outgrew, I had to recognize that and grieve that. And so in my case, like I literally was dimming my own light. So setting boundaries is important. Focusing on your own goals. My motto is, how do I make my today better than my yesterday? Right? Like that's the only competition. As you're working on things and developing things, and people, when I started the podcast, people say, oh, everybody has a podcast. I need you to remember that there's a ton of bread in the bread aisle. And I've experienced different breads. There's certain breads that I really like, but I only buy it when it's on sale. And sometimes you can go to the bread aisle and it's empty, right? There's TV shows that come out all the time. There's movies that come out all the time. When people are creating movies, they don't say, well, they already have a movie out. They don't got this movie. They don't got this podcast, right? So as you're thinking about your goals, like try to be your own competition. Make it about you. Yes, there's a million other things going on that may be similar to what you're doing, but what you're doing is going to be different and unique because you're putting your stamp on it. Surround yourself with positive people. Be mindful of the company that you keep. You'll be surprised. Some of the company you keep may be weighing you down, and it's a choice to be in their company. And I understand, like, it feels good to have the quantity of people, but remember, we need to look at quality. And it could be one of those things where like, they're still my friends. We have fun when we party and hang out. So those are your partying friends. You got to put them in a category. The business friends or the people that are going to excel you in the different areas that you're trying to go, you need to make sure you're creating that tribes. Like sometimes people are just in categories. They're not bad people, but they're not what you need. They can't fully provide everything that you need. And you got to accept that and understand that. Practicing self-care is always important. Seeking help, right? Like therapy is always great. Coaches are great, right? And then staying true to yourself. So those are some things to think about, and staying true to yourself and being grounded, like not compromising on your goals or values, like really being mindful. What are my goals? What are my values? So you're not compromising on it. The problem is like our goals and values, they're in our head. And it's sometimes when we're in certain spaces, we allow that space to take over what we want to be true or know to be true. So really be mindful of that. All right, so let's watch this 3-minute clip from Lisa Nicole. That's my girl. I don't know her personally, but I like her. And because she's such a powerful speaker, where she talks about not letting people dim your light. And then I'll just kind of recap what she said, and then we'll be out of here. So let me share my screen for Miss Lisa Nicole. And sometimes hearing things in different ways from people is powerful. Sometimes I'll say, like, for instance, like my clients, I'll talk about certain things and I can see they don't really get it, but then they're reading something or watching something. They're like, oh my gosh, I finally get it. Like, it's so dope. So always continue whatever you're trying to like work on or understand. Don't stop trying, because eventually your mind's going to work with you to try to figure it out. Share. Okay.
On survival. I remember when my 9th grade teacher asked me, Lisa, what do you want to be when you grow up? And see, I have to fight the Harlem Crip 30s every day to get home from school. So I looked at her and said, alive. I took an English class. I got a fail in English. And my English teacher said in front of the entire class, Lisa, you have to be the weakest writer I've ever met in my entire life. Don't worry, my story ends good. Don't feel sorry for me. I got 7 under my belt. And then the same year, my speech teacher said, after giving me a D-, I knew I had an A in speech. Like, come on. He obviously didn't agree with me. He gave me a D- and said, quote unquote, Miss Nichols, I recommend you never speak in public, that you get a desk job. So here's the beauty of that story. Other people's perception of you ain't none of your business. Everything you've ever been through, sat through, rose through, cried through, prayed through, everything is a setup for your next best season. And the way you forgive the perceivingly unforgivable, the way you love the perceivingly unlovable, the way you accept what seems to be unacceptable, the way you embrace after you've been betrayed, the way you do that is the way you will lead us. Your light belongs to everyone who'll be illuminated because you were bold enough and obedient enough to let your light shine. Yes, 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 yes. And every time you cross someone's path and they can't handle your light, you know those people that they try to give you reasons why you should tone it down a bit. That they would tell Cheryl not to sing so loud. Hey. Right. They would tell me to shut up in class. They tell you kind of strange. You know those people, dream snatchers, vision busters. Don't be mad at them. They can only love you to the capacity in which they're able to love themselves. Don't be mad at them. Don't be mad at them. Pray for them. Love them. Because they're dealing with themselves like we're dealing with us. But I want you to remember that your 70 watts has to be turned way up. Because you got way more to give us. It ain't over yet. Don't put a period where God put a comma. And when you turn it up to 159 watts, you know, you keep turning it up. You stop dimming your light. You say, today is the first day of the rest of my life. You turn it up. You're going to find people that can't handle your light. And before today, you might have dimmed your light. You might have shrunk a little bit. You might have tempered it down a little bit. But after today, I want you to see this. After today, turn the lights up. After today, you don't dare dim your light. As your light gets brighter, You gonna disrupt some people, and they gonna tell you your light's too bright, your light's too bright, your light's too bright, your light's too bright. Then you just look at them and say, well, I'm not dimming my light. I'm just gonna hand you some shades.
So I love her. You love her too, Annette. She's my girl in my head. So really quick, think about how many times do you love her too? Yeah, she's so dope. How many times, and this is just for you to think about as we're ending this session, but how many times have people made comments to you about you that cause you to forget who you are? And that's what Lisa Nicole said, right? A couple of quotes that I wanted to pull from what she said was, other people's perception of you is none of your business. I need you to remember that as you're finding yourself negating who you are because you're worried about what people will think. It's really none of your business what they think. They're going to think it whether you choose to do it or not. And then the other thing that she said that was powerful is that they can only love you at the capacity that they can love themselves, right? So it's important to remember as you're navigating, trying to allow your light to shine, allowing yourself to be like who you want to be or who you know you can be. I think deep down inside our spirit and our system knows what we're capable of. And a lot of times we're living below our capabilities. And because we're doing that, I feel like a lot of people, you're going to struggle with a lot of anxiety until you start stepping out and on faith and doing the things that you're supposed to do. I'll get these ideas like over time. I've done so many things over the last since 2014, 15. And if anytime I try to dismiss a thought, I feel like I get bombarded with it. I feel anxious about it. And then when I start doing it, the anxiety around not doing it goes away, but then there's some anxiety around the process of it, right? And I'm talking to myself and I'm not allowing that negative thought or comment to win because I'm listening to people like Lisa Nicole, like something like that. Like I listen to these motivational videos all the time. And so I'm constantly feeding my spirit. And so as you're working on trying not to allow your light to be so dim and like really stepping out, I need you to engage in feeding your spirit because that's going to allow it to kind of radiate and shine. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. I always say at the end, if anything I ever say resonates for you, like understand, like you have the power to create change. And I know it feels hard and we know what we know about feelings change. It feels hard. But I promise you that like more you begin to have faith and believe in yourself, like no one can take that away. So thank you so much. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, same place. Talk to you later.
Talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste.